So next, we're going to hear from Tony Hseih, who's somebody who I think many of you are very eager to hear from. He's the CEO of Zappos, needless to say. In 1999, when he was 24, he sold Link Exchange to Microsoft for $265 million. Then he joined Zappos as an advisor and investor, became CEO. 2009, Zappos was acquired by Amazon for $1.2 billion. He also wrote, as I'm sure you all know, huge bestseller, Delivering Happiness. So please help me welcome Tony Hseih.
Thank you. So real quick story first. How many of you have actually purchased from Zappos before? Very cool. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Zappos, quick Cliff Notes summary. We're about 14 years old now, and really the way we think of our brand is actually about customer service. And hopefully 10 years from now, people won't even realize we started selling shoes online. And in fact, today we sell a lot more than shoes. We also sell clothing, handbags, and other product categories. And we've talked about how one day Zappos could possibly open up a hotel or an airline and really build our brand to be about the very best customer service and customer experience. And our whole strategy for doing so is actually by making something else the #1 priority of the company, and that something else is company culture. And our whole belief is that if we get the culture right, then most of the other stuff like delivering great customer service or building a long-term enduring brand or business will just be a byproduct of that. And so we've grown from no sales in '99 to now we're doing roughly about $3 billion a year in gross merchandise sales. And the #1 driver of all that growth has been through repeat customers and word of mouth. And so let me advance. I'm doing a team building thing. I don't normally have a mustache. This is my first time having a mustache. And so this is actually how when my book came out about 3 years ago, called Delivering Happiness, the way we thought of our brand at Zappos is in terms of the 3 C's: clothing, customer service, and company culture. And one of my favorite quotes actually is from, I think, an executive from one of the major ad agencies, is that a great brand is a story that never stops unfolding. And after my book came out, people asked, okay, delivering happiness, clothing, customer service, company culture, what's next? And actually, for the longest time, did not have a great answer for that. And this is what our headquarters in Henderson, which is a suburb of Las Vegas, looked like. We were actually at 1,500 employees spread amongst 3 different buildings. And this is the building that I was in. And we actually, just last month, actually announced that we finished moving into the former Las Vegas City Hall in downtown Vegas. And pretty happy to get everyone under one roof, because being spread in 3 different buildings actually had a big negative impact on our culture. But we've actually been looking for a place to call home, to call our permanent headquarters for at least the past 7 or 8 years. And it was surprisingly hard to find anywhere in Vegas a place where we could house everyone under one roof and have enough land to expand upon. And so pretty happy with our ribbon cutting and grand opening. And then when the City Hall opportunity became available, and we found out about 2 or 3 years ago, we were super excited and asked our employees for ideas for what to have in our dream campus. And I actually toured campuses like Nike, Google, and Apple, amazing campuses. And I remember in Nike, there was one building that had a running track around it, and another building that had an on-site pub on the ground floor. And we thought to ourselves, we definitely need one of those. And so surveyed our employees and asked, what features do you want? And they came back with on-site pub, on-site gym, and so on. But the #1 request we got from employees was actually doggy daycare. More than human daycare. And so as we started getting all these requests, we realized a couple of things. One was that we couldn't possibly fit these hundreds of requests into a physical building. But the other thing we realized was all those other campuses, Apple, Nike, Google, were great for the employees, but were actually really insular and didn't really integrate or contribute to the community around them. And so we thought to ourselves, what if instead of just focusing on ourselves, we actually turned the entire concept inside out? What if we took an approach that is more analogous to NYU, where the campus kind of blends in with the city, and you don't really know where one begins and the other ends? And so coincidentally, right around the same time, this was about 3 years ago, a bunch of Zappos employees, myself included, discovered this area of downtown Vegas that most tourists don't know about called Fremont East. Most tourists, when they think Vegas, think of the big casinos on the Strip, which actually turns out those aren't even technically in the city of Las Vegas. Or if they know anything about downtown, it's the old casinos, the overhead light show, and so on the west side of Las Vegas Boulevard. But on the east side of Las Vegas Boulevard, if you go into any of these bars or cafes or restaurants, you'd have no idea you were in Vegas. And in fact, it's almost the complete opposite of the Strip. There's no gaming. And it's actually the most community-focused place I've ever lived. And I grew up in San Francisco, but I've never lived in a place where the bar owners actually hang out in each other's bars to support each other and to support the community. And so it's one of those magical coincidences that was just too good to be true, that this Fremont East area, which I hadn't even heard about till a few years ago, just was coincidentally 5 blocks away from the former city hall. And so we had our answer from the Zappos perspective in terms of what we wanted to do with our brand. How do we expand our brand? By basically adding a 4th C, and that 4th C being community. And so now, in everything that we do, we try to actually incorporate all 4 of these C's. So for example, we held a skating event where there was a skate ramp and professional skateboarders open to the community, and then it was also a fun bonding activity for our employees. And then we captured that on video and in photographs and live streamed that out and also sent it out to customers of ours that are interested in skate shoes. And so that way we can kind of, over time, weave in the entire story of Zappos beyond just shoes, beyond just clothing, beyond just customer service, and now including company culture and community. So that's the Zappos side of it. Separate from Zappos, formed a separate company called Downtown Project, which is just no outside investors. It's just myself and a couple other friends that are funding the company, and you can see roughly that there's a $350 million budget. There's a few different goals, and this was originally formed to complement the Zappos move to downtown. One is to have everything you need to live, work, play within walking distance. Another is to help make downtown Vegas the most community-focused large city in the world, and probably the place people least expect it. Third is to make it the co-learning and co-working capital of the world, and not just for tech startups, but also in fashion and culinary and photography. And you can imagine actually creating co-working spaces around anything that you can actually build a community around. And what makes us different from other real estate developers or other urban revitalization projects is rather than maximizing the short-term ROI or cash flow needs that most real estate developers have, we have this concept of maximizing the long-term ROC in all of our investments, return on community. And it's analogous to how we hire at Zappos. When we hire people at Zappos, we do 2 sets of interviews. There's the normal set that the hiring manager and his or her team does, but then our HR department does a separate set of interviews purely for culture fit, and they have to pass both in order to be hired. So on the investment side for Downtown Project, whether we're investing in a tech company or in a small business or another type of business, we, in addition to it making sense as an investment in its own right, the entrepreneurs and the company needs to care more about just themselves, and they actually need to care about the community and want to help out other entrepreneurs in the community. And then the other thing that we actually focus on is institutionalizing this acronym I stole from Jim Collins' latest book, Great by Choice, ROL, Return on Luck, which actually sounds like a really strange or even almost impossible thing to actually try to manage. How do you actually accelerate serendipity? But we actually have very real metrics behind this, and I'll share some how we're going about trying to accelerate luck and serendipity later on. And so our big bet is for the Downtown Project, we have the 3 C's of collisions. And by collisions, we mean people in the community running into each other, entrepreneurs running into each other. And the reason why that's important is because the research has shown that most innovation actually comes from something outside your industry being applied to your own. So by accelerating the collisions, community, and co-learning, that not only will that lead to a happier and luckier community, but actually innovation and productivity increases. And so here's a quick breakdown of the budget. We're investing $50 million into small businesses to help build a sense of neighborhood and community. And so call it 1 to 200 small businesses. And this is actually my wall in my apartment. There's a Post-it note wall, and we actually have tours come through. And when the tours come through, we just ask them, what do you want in your dream neighborhood? We're actually very anti-top-down master programming. Instead, we just want this to be organic and community-driven. And if it's not already on the wall, we encourage people to actually just write it down on a Post-it and add their own idea to the wall. But the other cool thing that happens is every once in a while, we get someone whose lifelong dream is to, say, retire 10 years from now and start a cupcake bakery. And we basically tell them, well, rather than wait 10 years, why don't we invest in you now, and you can start living your dream, and it'll also help build this sense of neighborhood and community. And so we have a few different criteria. Owner-operated is really important to us. Unique, first or best is really important, story-worthy, and ultimately, probably the most important one is that it needs to help build community. So this is Natalie. I serendipitously ran into her a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago at the local coffee shop. And she was working as a chef at one of the casinos for 10 years, actually, and had just quit her job. She was sick of working in a casino environment. And as I talked to her, it turns out that she was actually packing up her bags, about to leave town because she didn't want to be in the casino business anymore. And as we started talking, learned that her lifelong dream was to open up her own breakfast and lunch place. And so she's actually one of the first small businesses that we invested in, and I'll show you this under construction. And I'm not normally a PowerPoint person, but I'm very proud of this transition. So if we can go back one slide, please, and then we'll look at that one more time. Thank you. Thank you. You can see this under construction. She actually just had her 1-year anniversary. She's been doing triple her initial projections. And so not only is she living her dream and doing well financially, but she's also now ready to mentor the next generation of first-time entrepreneurs that want to open up a restaurant. This is a check cashing place last year. This is what it looked like on the inside. Sarah, turns out her lifelong dream was to open up her own boutique clothing store, and she describes this as a clothing store, or as a hangout place that just happens to sell clothing. In 2 weeks, actually less than 2 weeks, we're opening up I think it's the world's largest container park. This is actually someone named Ernie, used to be a Zappos employee, left a few years ago to pursue his passion of making barbecue sauce and barbecue food. And I happened to be walking by as they were lowering, that's literally his barbecue restaurant in a container being lowered behind him, and he was super happy that day. And that's actually, at night, there's a 40-foot praying mantis from Burning Man that shoots out 20-foot flames. You can see some of the renderings here. And then it's kind of hard to see, but at the top there's outdoor live music, and 40 retail shops, 5 food and beverage. And the focus, though, is actually in the middle, where it's a children's paradise, where there's going to be a 25-foot tall Swiss Family Robinson type of treehouse, these giant Lego blocks, and so on. So the idea is kids are having fun, parents can enjoy their wine and cheese with their adult friends, watch the live band, and so on. One of our goals is to get people to get rid of their cars, so we're actually investing in bike sharing, and we announced a few months ago that we placed the largest order in the United States for Teslas. We ordered 100 Teslas, and that'll be part of our car sharing program in addition to other electric electric car sharing programs as well. We've set aside $50 million to invest in tech companies, and in the past year, we've relocated about 60 tech companies from other states or even other countries. We just had a 20-person company from China move to downtown Vegas that was originally on their way to Silicon Valley. And we ask all these different companies why downtown Vegas versus Silicon Valley or another city, and they give us two reasons. One is really this sense of community that you can really feel even just by visiting for a day or two. But the other reason they give us is really this whole idea of thinking of the city as a startup. And how many opportunities do you have in a lifetime to help shape the future of a major city? Partnering with Venture for America, which is like Teach for America, but for college graduates that want to become entrepreneurs. Relocating Teach for America's Vegas offices to downtown to bring about that additional energy. We opened up an early childhood center that'll eventually include K through 12, teaching kids entrepreneurship and creativity using the latest neuroscience research. Took over a monthly festival called First Friday that draws 25,000 to 30,000 people. It's arts and music. And also we're bringing large-scale art. This is 45 feet tall, and I think you can actually crawl up in there and get a DJ on top and bring in large-scale art to downtown Vegas as well. And so the idea is every block or so have some sort of something interesting. It could be large-scale art. It could be we're building the world's largest functioning fire hydrant next to the dog park. Building all sorts of things. And the idea is just get people to walk one more block and then get them to walk another block, because Vegas traditionally has been a very car-focused town. This is a Mexican restaurant that we partnered in and opened up a few months ago. And then we also, just 2 weekends ago, through the Life is Beautiful Festival, which was an arts festival, music festival. There were 65 bands, a culinary festival, and that drew about 60,000 people, where we fenced off 15 city blocks, which has never been done before in any cities. And so it was kind of like South by Southwest meets Coachella. And then this actually is a book I would recommend people to read, even if you're not involved in city revitalization stuff. It's called Triumph of the City. It's written by a Harvard economics professor that studied cities from all different time periods, Rome, New York, Detroit, and looked at why some thrived and some didn't. And a lot of the findings are actually really counterintuitive, but we're using it as our kind of playbook for ways we're approaching things. And Jeffrey West was up here earlier, and one of the key findings of city research is that every time the size of a city doubles, innovation or productivity per resident increases by 15%. But when companies get bigger, as Jeffrey West was mentioning, then productivity per employee goes down. And so from the Zappos perspective, part of our goal in being involved with this is to try to avoid that fate. How do we actually organize Zappos more like a city and less like a corporation that is destined to eventually die if you follow the history of other companies that are hierarchically organized? And so the ingredients you need for that to happen are a residential density of 100 residents per acre, combined with street level activity, so all those post-it notes for those residents to collide. And the third ingredient is probably the hardest, but also the cheapest, and the one that gives you the most leverage, this culture of openness, collaboration, and sharing. Because if people are twice as likely to talk to each other, maybe you only need half the residential density. And so a lot of the stuff that we do, both from the Zappos perspective in terms of employees within the office and in the city level, is really think about how do you get people to collide more often. And we actually prioritize collisions over convenience. And we think about things like office density and city density, because it turns out that average office density in the US is about 200 or 300 square feet per employee. And at Zappos, in our previous offices, we were at 120 square feet per employee. At our new offices, we're actually at under 100 square feet per employee. And the reason why we think that's important is because the research has shown if you sit twice as far away from someone in an office environment, you don't see them half as often. You see them half as often squared, so a quarter as often. And so we do weird things like there's a parking garage on the left, and the city employees used to park there, go across the sky bridge and into the building. We actually shut down that sky bridge, which forces employees out into the street to have more collision opportunities with each other as well as with people in the community. And so the big bet is basically get all of these different groups, and this is just a partial list now, that are creative and entrepreneurial and have a bias to collaborate and talk to each other, get them in a relatively small space together, and statistically, the magic will just kind of happen on its own. And that 15% increase in productivity is kind of the accidental historical average. So I think if we're actually thoughtful about how we approach things and actually purposeful about how we approach things, we can actually get gains much greater than that. And one of the things we realize is that culture is to company as community is to city. It's the same concept, just at a different scale. This is actually the building I live in, and there's about 500 bedrooms in there, and our group is collectively leasing about half of them. And 100 of those bedrooms we've actually set up as furnished apartments, free hotel rooms, and basically we just tell people, hey, next time you're in Vegas, come stay in one of our furnished apartments, free hotel room. And what happens is the people we invite essentially end up getting tricked into going to the local coffee shop, the local bars, and so on, and they discover a whole other side of Vegas. But we're hosting about 100 people a week now, and the other cool thing that happens is that those people end up meeting each other. And so a conference like this, or like TED or South by Southwest, there's two reasons to go. One is for the content, and then the other half is for no matter, you're just going to run into people serendipitously and have these serendipitous interactions. And so that's kind of what downtown Vegas is starting to become, is every day. It's almost like we're throwing a mini TED conference every single week now, because when visitors come, we just ask them, hey, as long as you're in town, do you want to give a talk to the community? It's free to the community, and I'd say 95% of people we ask if they want to do that say yes. And so what ends up happening is there's this ongoing free content for the community that also brings the community together. And so we acquired this building that is actually going to be opening up. It's on Fremont, Las Vegas Boulevard, super prominent intersection. And rather than turn it into a bar or easy money maker like a McDonald's or something else, we're actually building a speakers theater called the Inspire Theater. And so the vision is, imagine if Wednesday afternoon through Sunday afternoon, anyone can walk in and there's an interesting TED-like talk about something. There's also Vegas's largest magazine rack and co-working spaces, collaboration spaces, and so on. And so I'm going to fast forward through some of these in time, but there's, because of time, but we're actually theming some of the different weeks now, and here's some photos of our fashion incubator that we open. And just want to show some really quick math. The value of a resident like me, I'm out and about in a, call it collisional way, 3 or 4 hours a day, 7 days a week. I travel a lot, so 40 weeks a year. And so it works out to about 1,000 collisional hours a year in terms of the value of a resident like me from a collisions perspective. This guy, Jake, we were trying to convince, he raised over $1 million on Kickstarter, and he couldn't move to Vegas, but he said he could come on the 3rd week of every month, which is our fashion focus week, and give talks and help other fashion entrepreneurs. And he's given talks about raising money on Kickstarter and so on. And so started actually doing the math on a purposeful visitor like Jake, who purposely contributes to community when he's in town. And he's in town, when he's in town, he's out and about in a collisional way 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 times a year. It actually works out to about 1,000 collisional hours a year. So originally we were just focused on residents, but now we have this new concept of subscribing to downtown Vegas that where people can be part of the community and actually can help accelerate all the collisions, all the serendipity, and all the co-learning that's going on. And so we basically just took that formula of 100 residents per acre and changed it to 100,000 collisional community hours per acre per year, which works out to 2.3 collisional hours per square foot per year, which then gives a completely different way of looking at our small business investments and our real estate investments. So if investing in a restaurant, you can look at the square footage, do estimates on number of customers, how long those customers will be there, and then see if it's yielding at least 2.3 collisional hours per square foot per year. And so our big bet is by focusing on these 3 C's, collisions, community, and co-learning, what we want people to say about downtown, whether they're just visiting or subscribing or living there, is that downtown Vegas will make you smarter, which is probably the last thing a lot of people would associate with Vegas or downtown. Right? And so people are very surprised when they actually come and stay with us. And I would invite any of you to actually stay with us. I'll give my contact information at the end. And so, through Zappos and Delivering Happiness, which is a separate company that was spun off of the book, and Downtown Project, there's this common theme of inspiration that we try to weave throughout them. And it was mentioned earlier that just in the past few years, we passed a threshold where for the first time in human history, 50% of humans now live in cities. And within our lifetime, it's going to be 75%. And so we view this as much more than just about downtown Vegas or even the Vegas area in general. And a lot of city revitalization projects depend on having an expensive stadium or sports team or a Harvard or Stanford. We chose the 3 C's of collisions, community, and co-learning because we wanted something that could be replicated to other communities and cities. And to us, this whole project, the Downtown Project, is a lot like the story of the 4-Minute Mile, where for the longest time, people thought it was impossible to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. Or they thought, oh, even if you did, you could, as soon as you crossed the finish line, you'd probably die. And then turns out that wasn't true. In 1954, a guy named Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. But what I found really interesting is in less than a year, other people broke the 4-minute mile. So if we can make downtown Vegas, probably the place voted least likely to succeed, a place of inspiration, entrepreneurial energy, creativity, innovation, upward mobility, discovery, and so on. If we can do that in downtown Vegas, then hopefully we can help inspire other communities and cities, and we can serve as the 4-minute mile for the world. So copy of this presentation, tony@zappos.com. I just want to end on this quote: "A great brand is a story that never stops unfolding." I think the same is true for a company, same is true for a city, and same thing is true for a community. And that's why I'm so excited to be part of this downtown project in downtown Vegas, because I can't wait to see what unfolds next. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. That was terrific. Josh and I had the privilege of going to Vegas and staying in that building and seeing the amazing energy that Tony has created there and his team, and it's really astonishing. And it's a fantastic lead-in to the next session. We don't have time for questions now, sorry, but we really, really appreciate you coming, Tony. But the next session is going to be a continuation of the same theme, because it's all about how do you intelligently design cities for the 21st